Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Stock Picking with me, the trade engineer, as well as financial Missy. Hello. Yep. So yeah, if you guys are live with us right now, do give us a like so that we know that you are here with us. Yep. So what do you think we're going to talk about today? Any guesses?
I think today will be very, very exciting, very interesting with what we are going to share. The upcoming, I don't know, for people who are into the meta space and stuff, I think it'll be very exciting.
Oh yes, indeed. I guess if you are into the metaverse, and meta space, this company should be no stranger to you. Yeah, in fact, it's quite a prominent company. Yeah. Yeah. So I think without further ado, let's review the stock or the company. Right. So the company is none other than Roblox. Right. Ticker symbol RBLX. Yep. So have you heard of this stock called Roblox before? Yep. If you do, just type it down in the comments. Let us know that you have heard of this stock. Yep. Right. Okay. So without further ado, let's start the session, and perhaps financial VC, do you like to start the ball rolling with your analysis?
Right. Just give me a while. Let me see whether anybody liked this page of what we are sharing right now because it'd be very exciting. If you guys are into the meta space, if you guys are into investing, I think it's actually something that um it's going to run big. It's going to run wow soon. How soon? We will find out. But I can tell you guys that it is soon to be. So like this page, if you guys are here with us, like this page, let us know that you are hearing us loud and clear so that we can actually share with you guys what we actually think about this particular stock, right? So it's very exciting. Let me share my screen right now. Okay, yeah. Share screen. Oh wait, sorry. Some system error here, but it's okay. Let me rectify it. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Right. Not yet.
Not yet, huh? Okay, just give
Yep.
me a while. Wait, sure. Oh, wait, huh? I think there's some error that I need to rectify. Uh, okay. Okay, wait. Oh, weird. I can't share my screen. Oh, okay. Under screen recording. But it's not that's weird. Okay, never mind. Let me see whether this way works. Oh, okay. I have no idea why my screen is not working well. I guess maybe the trade
Yep.
engineer can actually kick off first while I settle on
Yep.
my end.
All right. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I will start off today's sharing first, and let me share my screen. Hopefully, I have no problem.
Yeah, yours is
Yep.
working fine.
Yes, mine is looking fine. Yep. Okay, Ken. So let's start the session proper, right? So so this company we are going to talk about today, right, is none other than Roblox, right? Ticker symbol RBLX, right? So I actually posed a question here, right? Is this company going to run soon, right? So it actually just IPO last year, right? If you have been following the news, and recently, right, it actually hit the new lows, right? It actually went below its IPO price But ever since then, right, it has been making a slight rebound, right? So the question, right, is whether, this stock is actually going to make a run up, right? Because it has ran up quite a significant amount last year before it actually went down to clock the new lows, right? So I think that's something, all of us might be very concerned about, especially if you have been, paying attention to this particular stock. Right. So once again, right, if before I begin, right, if you are here with us, right, do give this video a like, right, so that we know that you are here with us and we can start the session proper. Right. But before we do the analysis for Roblox, right? As always, I'll do a quick follow up, on our previous stock, and what we covered, in the previous session was on Nikola, right? So if you haven't watched that video already, do check it out, right? It's on FINANCIALMissy's Facebook page, right? Last Sunday, right? So let's quickly do a recap, right, of what we covered last week, right? Before I start, I just apologize, right, because I wasn't there live with all you guys. But nevertheless, I did share with all of you on my thoughts of this stock, right, this particular stock. So let me do a quick recap, right, what I covered last week, right? So I actually shared this chart, last week, right, where I actually, this was a daily chart for Nikola, right, and we had, this downtrend line, right, that was tested numerous times before, and recently, just cleared the downtrend line, right. Yep, and then over here we saw some lines, right, the support line over here, as well as the resistance line. So you can see, it was supported previously, tested numerous times, but it was still trading below the horizontal resistance level. Right, and on the MACD itself, we did see a crossover, some promising trend, right, of the MACD, right. It actually went to positive region just slightly. Right, so last week, right, for the recap, right, what I shared last week was basically, on the bull side of things, right, it actually broke out of that downtrend line, right. So we broke out this downward sloping downtrend line, right, on this day, right? It was a very green bar and it broke out very strongly, right? Ever since then, you're trading above that line. It was supported, right, by the horizontal support, right? So at this level, it was supported 3 times, right? Tested 3 times before, and it's trading above this support level, right? And we saw that daily MACD crossover, which I mentioned earlier. Right, but on the bear side of things, right, there is still concern, right, that it might still turn for the worse, right? One of the things that we're concerned about is basically that it is still trading below that horizontal resistance line, right, over here. It's still trading below this horizontal resistance line, right? And we were unsure where the price, if the price will actually fall below that downtrend line, right? Because the last trading day it was a red bar. If you look at the shorter time scale, right, on the hourly time scale, the hourly MACD was negative. As well, now the whole market sentiment is pretty volatile, right? So what did I suggest last week, right? Basically what I suggested last week was, if the price, well, this basically for trading, right? So if the price is supported by that downtrend line, right, we could enter a long position, right? But we could set a take profit price at the first resistance level, right, which is over here, right? But if the price actually breaks below that horizontal support, right, we should actually wait and see again, right? We should wait and see wait for the next support to be found. Yeah, but I did go into quite a bit of detail or some negative news regarding this company, right? So that was something we have to be very mindful of at the time, right? Even now, if you are thinking of buying, right, because that negative news is still there, right? And of course, macroeconomic outlook, right? That is also something that you have to take note because of the whole instability in the market nowadays. Right. So what happened ever since then, right? So we had the last 5 trading days for last week, and let's see what actually panned out, right after that. Right. So this is the updated daily chart, right? with the updated trading days for the last week, right? So you can see, right, this is the same downtrend line, right? And it actually, it broke, right? Before last week, it actually broke already, but it actually came down, right? Actually went slightly below this downtrend line, right? On the 14th of March, right? But the very next day, on 15th of March, right, it actually just rebounded, right? And cleared this downtrend line again, right? So this can be said that, it was a fake breakdown, right? And it still remains supported. This downtrend line still remains supported, right? In fact, right, on the 15th of March, right, that green candle, right, where it actually rebounded, it actually went close, right? You can see that this horizontal support, it actually went close to this horizontal support, right, of $6.50, right? But it actually did not touch, right? It went close, did not touch, and did not break below the support level, right? And you can see that the daily MACD, despite all these fluctuation in prices, it still remain consistently positive, right? And in the subsequent trading days ever since then, right, it actually hit the first resistance level that I pointed out last week at $8.90, right? So let's recap, right? So if you actually took into account what I said last week, right, you might have entered a short trade, right? So it actually was a trade win, right? That went according to plan, right? Almost according to plan, right? So basically, right, if you enter on the 15th of March, you probably won't enter the 14th because it actually broke below that downtrend line. But when you see that it actually rebounded and it cleared the downtrend line again, and then it basically shows that the support of the downtrend line still holds, right? And you entered at that point, right? You might see some good profits, right? So say you enter, a bit late on the 15th of March on $7.30. So that's the closing price, on the 15th of March, right? And you set a take profit price at the first resistance level, right? So the first resistance level, right, is $8.90, right? As what I mentioned last week, right? And it actually hit on 18th of March. Yep. So if we look at the math, right? If you look at the math, about the math, it's actually a whopping 22% gain, right? If it just 3 to 4 days, right? So that is very spectacular, right? That is pretty spectacular. Like who wants, which one of you would like 22% percentage gain in just 3 to 4 days, right? If you like that, type it down in the comments below, and let me know, right? Because I think this is spectacular, right? So even though there's this negative news surrounding this company, right? If you're into short-term trading, you could still, earn some money out of this, right? Simply by just looking at some technical indicators, and following the trading plan. Right, so that's just a quick recap of Nicola. I hope all of you, some of you, who actually took action, actually managed to win some money, right, from this. Right, and at this point, right, if you like what we are sharing, so far, or what I've been sharing so far, don't forget to click the like or the love button, right, so that we know that you are enjoying the sharing so far. Right, so without further ado, let's go on to today's stock pick. So today's stock pick, right, is none other than Roblox, right, as we mentioned earlier, right, Roblox. So let's quickly look at this stock, that its overall price chart. Right, so you can see, right, this stock has been going through quite a bit of up and down. Right, so let's briefly run through the prices. Right, so if you've been following this stock, right, you know that it actually recently just IPO last year, right, at an indicative price of about $45, right. So on the first day of trading, right, on 10th of March, it actually gap up and basically closed at $69.50. Right, so throughout the year, right, it actually gained quite immense beat, right? Eventually, it hit a high on the 22nd of November, right, at a whopping $141.60, right? But that's all good things came to an end from that point on, and basically went downhill, right? Eventually, from November 22nd to the 15th of March, right, a few months later, right, it actually dropped from $141 to a miserable $36, right? It's even lower than the IPO price. But ever since 15th of March, right, it actually started to rebound, right? So it actually gained quite a fair bit, and eventually in the last trading day, last Friday, it actually closed at $49.62, right? So that's a brief recap of the price, right? So we work out the math. So basically, right, this gain from $69.50 to $141.60, that is a whopping 104%, right? But ever since then, like, it has dropped a fair bit. It has dropped by 65%, right? So the big question here, right, is why, right? Why did it gain so crazily in the past, and why did it subsequently drop quite a substantial amount as well, right? So let's quickly go through some recent news that might explain this phenomenon, right? So here's a recent piece of news for Roblox, right? So let's look in the detail, right? So this is actually taken from foo.com, right? So this article actually gives a pretty good summary of what had happened for Roblox since its IPO, right? So let me draw your attention to some of the things that are highlighted in yellow, right? So this company, right, it initially attracted a lot of attention, right, because of its demand. Right? It was wildly popular among twin creators and players, so mainly the young, right? And with the COVID-19, right, spread, more people are staying at home, so that actually helped to increase the demand even further, right? Because more students stay at home, right, study at home because they can't go to school, right? And as a result, right, they actually spend more time on this platform, right? They spend more time on Roblox, right? So it pushed the demand for this stock higher. So as a result, right, that's why we saw that 104% gain, right? It's basically because of the hype at that time. Yep, but as what I mentioned, right, it has since dropped back down, right? So there are some concerns, right, that have came up ever since then, right? So there's over here, right, in the same article, right, it also given us some other reasons on why this is so, right? So there is a concern, right, because now a lot of countries are actually getting out of this lockdown world, right? We are all coming out of this COVID pandemic, right? People are starting to, move out of their houses and go back to the community, and things are going back to square one, right? So there could be a concern, right? People are concerned that this company might see a decelerating growth, because after all, what pushed its demand was basically because of the lockdown period during COVID-19 pandemic, right? So as a result, they might be concerned that the demand will start to drop, right? That's one. I mean, there are other reasons, right? As highlighted here, right? Basically, this company is still seeing losses, right? In fact, its losses are widening, right? Leverage is also rising, and there is also stock dilution that caused some concern among shareholders, right? So some people, with seeing all this negative news, they start to sell their shares, yeah, and that's what caused the price to actually drop significantly, right? But in the broader market, right, in the broader scheme of things, right, there is a sell-off in growth stock, right? As we all know already, right? If you're following the US market, there is a broad sell-off in stocks, especially growth stocks, right? And this is mainly because of all the broad indicators, right? Like inflation, rising interest rates, as well as the Ukraine-Russia war, right? So these macroeconomic challenges are basically what exacerbated this pain. Right. But although it's it might seem like a doom and gloom for this company, right? But there are some potential catalysts, right? So over here, right, in the article, it actually pointed out three potential catalysts, right? So first of all, right, for Roblox, it is focused on gaining older users, right? So it's trying to diversify. It's trying to go out instead of being dependent on children and students, right? It's trying to gain a market share among other age groups, right? So older users are one of them that they're targeting, right? So this is something that if it works out, it might send the price up, right? It might be a positive catalyst for this company. Right, second, right, the second potential catalyst, right, is an increasing dependence on overseas growth, right? So previously it was pretty domestic, right? But nowadays, right, it is expanding the market, it's expanding beyond US and Canada, right? In fact, you can see that Europe, Asia, right, they are increasing in terms of growth for this company, right? More and more users are using Roblox in these countries, right? And they even highlighted that other countries, right, like Brazil, Russia, India, and Japan, right? So these countries, right, are also starting to use Roblox, right? But this article pointed out that is a double-edged sword, right? First of all, right, because all these other countries outside of US and Canada, right, they although it's good thing that they're expanding overseas, but these overseas users actually generate less revenue, right? That's one. Right. Secondly, right, we all know there's a Ukraine-Russia war, right? So geopolitical conflicts like this might also impact the growth potential of this stock, right? So this is something we need to keep in mind, right? So this might be a potential catalyst, but it might not work out very well for a company, right? So only time can tell to see what will happen, right? Yep, and the third catalyst, right? The third catalyst over here for Roblox is basically it's the metaverse portion, right? So it is actually expanding into the metaverse ecosystem, right? So that is something that is very that has huge potential, right? So if it actually works out, right, it might be there might be a lot of upside to this stock, right? So this is something that we need to closely watch out for to see what would pan out in the future for its metaverse expansion. So over here we have that three potential catalysts, right? That might imply further upside for this stock, right? So this is from fools.com. Yeah, you can check the article out if you are interested to find out the details. Right. So after going through so much on that news behind Roblox, right? I think the big question here you have, right, is what is the future direction for this company, right? And to answer that, right, being the trade engineer myself, I will look at the technicals to help us glean further insight, right? To give some hints of what can happen in the future, right? So, but before I do that, right, if you are enjoying our sharing so far, right, don't forget to give this video a like or a love, right, so that we know that you are loving it so far. Right, and now without further ado, right, let's check out the price chart for Roblox. Right, so let me change my screens. Yeah, there we go. Right, so let's orientate you a bit for this chart, right? So this is the Roblox chart, right, on the daily time frame, right? So over here, right, I've joined the downtrend line, right? It been tested numerous times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and even recently, right, the last trading day, it is, looks like it's testing that downtrend line as well, right? And if you look at other indicators, right, MACD, right, daily MACD, it's actually just it has just already crossed over, and we are seeing some positive. Basically, it has reached into the positive region, right? So that is something quite good. It might be a bullish indicator for this stock. right? But let's look at some of the levels, right? So this line, this horizontal line I drawn here is actually the first resistance level, right? Which was the previous support level, right? So so it was previously tested as support, right? But now it is actually trading below this line. So we are yet to see it cross above this horizontal resistance. So that is still a concern, right? Basically, if it hasn't crossed this, it might still be a resistance level that might not be able to cross, right? So we have to see whether this how it pans out when it hits this resistance level, right? And although it is touching this downtrend line, it hasn't actually crossed it very convincingly yet, right? So it remains to be seen what happens next week, whether it can actually break above this downtrend line, right? And let's change scales, right, to go into the shorter time scale, right? So this is the hourly time scale that we are seeing right now. And if we look at the MACD, it's still positive, right? It's still in the positive region, right? But if you look at RSI, right, the short term, 1 hour RSI, right, it is actually in the overbought region, right? So there could be some pullback, right? So do take note, there could be some pullback in the short term, right? So I think that basically sums up, some of the technical indicators for this company. And let me, now change screens back to my slides. Right. So to give a quick summary, right, of Roblox, right? So there are both bull and bear arguments for Roblox, right? So basically on the bull side of things, right? That's why I mentioned earlier, right? It is testing that downtrend line resistance, right? It looks like it's going to break it, right? So we do have to watch out to see whether it will eventually break this downtrend line, right? And on both the daily and hourly time scale, we have seen the MACD cross over into the positive region. So that's a good sign on the bullish side of things. Yeah, but on the bear side of things, right, there are still some concerns, right? First of all, the downtrend line, right, it hasn't really crossed it convincingly yet, right? It looks like it's going to break it, but it hasn't crossed yet. So we do have to watch out to see what happens next week, right? And the first resistance level, right, we drew just now, right? The horizontal resistance level, right, at $53 to $54, right? It's actually pretty close to the last closing price of $49.62, right? So there could be limited upside, right? That's something you need to take note of as well. And if we look at the shorter time scale for the RSI, right, it is actually in the overbought region. So there could be some pullback. And of course, last but not least, right, the overall market sentiment is still very volatile with the Russia-Ukraine war still ongoing, right, and other macroeconomic news, still prevailing, right. So that is something we do have to take note of, and we do have to watch out for. So what should you do for trading, right? So this is just my own opinion, right? Do your own due diligence before you actually do trade, right? Because my strategy might not work for all of you. Yeah, this is just my own opinion. And it's important, right, to actually do your own due diligence, right? So what should you do, right? So what I suggest here is basically to adopt a wait and see approach first, right? Wait for confirmation, right? So if you're a high risk taker and you're actually looking for maybe small gains, right? You can, right, actually consider entering a long position if the downtrend line that I drew earlier, right, is crossed convincingly and actually remains well supported, right? So you can take profit at the first resistance that I mentioned earlier, right, $53 to $54, and that will give you a pretty modest gain, right, of about 6 to 7%, right? But for those of you who are lower risk and prefer to wait a bit longer, right, low risk swing traders, right? So you can consider entering only for when you see further confirmation, right? So similarly, it's a long position, but you wait for confirmation, wait till the first horizontal resistance, like of $53, $54 is also crossed convincingly, right? So The good thing about waiting, a bit longer, is that you might see a potential larger gain, about 27 to 28%, right? But the bad thing is it might be a bit late to the game, and you might need to actually wait a bit longer, right? So it depends on your strategy, right? But first, of course, I think the main thing here is we need to see a downtrend line clearing before that resistance is actually cleared, right? There is another strategy that I sometimes use as well, which is I will enter first, right? And then when I see that the horizontal resistance is cleared as well, I will add my positions, right? So that's something you can consider as well, if it suits your strategy, right? But of course, if we need to also be mindful of the macroeconomic outlook, right? Because whatever it is, right, even if the technicals look good, right, if the whole macroeconomy starts collapsing, right, then this stock will not be spared as well. It might also see a pullback, right, or it might even see some steep selling, right? So do take note of that, right? And also do take note of any news surrounding this company, right? Because any news surrounding the company might also throw this stock off and either upwards or downwards, right? So do be mindful of that as well. Right, so that basically concludes my section, right? So just a few reminders, right? If you're tuning to my sharing, for the first time, right? This might be new to you, so please, you can consider doing some of these things. But for those of you who have been watching this, this is just a reminder, right? If you haven't done so already, do follow some of our pages, right? So before I end off, right, if you like our sharing today, right, don't forget to click that like or love button, right, so that we know that you are loving our sharing so far, right? And you can also click that share button, right, to share this video to other people whom you know, so that more people can benefit, right? And do follow us on our social media pages, right? I have my Facebook page, Instagram, and Twitter. Financial Missy has hers, right, on Facebook and Instagram, right? And do leave a comment below on what you think of our sharing today, as well as suggest the next stock for next sharing, right? Yep, do leave in the comments if you have some burning stock that you'd like us to break down for you, and we'll break down for you next Sunday, right? So we do have these sessions every Sunday, right? So today is on my page. The next Sunday, right, it will be on Financial Missy's Facebook page, right? So do keep an eye out for it, for our next stock sharing. And I have another sharing right tonight, right? And this is actually on the Binance SG Investor Facebook group, right? So it's on cryptocurrency, right? And so today's topic actually is there potential upside for this coin after some developments in its court case with the Security and Exchange Commission, right? So there is some recent news for this coin, right? And if you would like to find out which coin is that, right, you can come down and join me tonight at 9:30 p.m. on the Binance SG Investor Facebook group. Right, and that concludes my sharing. And let's see if Financial Missy is here with us. All right, I think she's still not here with us. Oh, yes, she's here already. All right. Can you hear me, Financial Missy?
Yo, I can hear you loud and clear. Hey, thank you so much for sharing with us the technical aspect. It was really very exciting and interesting about whether Roblox is actually the next upcoming wild thing, wild card that is going to go big, go wild. So I guess for my part, I will actually share you guys on the fundamental analysis, coupled with a bit of technical to see as an investor, is Roblox a good company to enter, and whether now is actually a good time for us to enter. So without further ado, let me share my screen. Oh yeah, I shared already.
Yes, yes, you
Right.
did.
Yeah, so it's so exciting, when it comes to Roblox, this particular company. I was like so excited to share with you guys. Um, but before I start proper, I would like to actually, emphasize to you guys that whatever we are doing, this kind of sharing every Sunday at 4 p.m. is actually for educational purpose, is for entertainment purpose, for you guys to take it into consideration, for you guys to, ponder about it. In no circumstances, whatever we share should be taken as a financial advice to buy or sell. So please, please, please do your own due diligence. Don't base on what we say that determines your next course of action. Yeah. Okay. So if you guys hear me loud and clear, and you guys are agreeable, just tap in the chat says okay. Right? Okay. So, well, today I'm going to share about Roblox. On Friday itself, this particular company, right, actually closes at $49.62. It's so exciting because it went from a high all the way so high, then it crashed all the way so low. So what has happened itself? Oh, sorry, pardon me for the color code. On Friday itself, we actually see an increment of 3.27, which translates to a 7.06%. And come on, how cool is that logo over there? It looks so cute, right? Right. So for Roblox itself, it's so exciting. You know why? Because this morning when I was just reading the news, I saw this particular article saying that HSBC enters the metaverse through partnership with the Sandbox. Wow. I mean, I'm not sure what you guys think about it, but to me, it's like, what? Big institutions are slowly entering the metaverse. And is HSBC the first first institution in Singapore to enter the metaverse? Um, I will keep it a suspense over there for you guys to do your own due diligence, your analysis yourself. But my biggest clue here is they're more than that. So it's so exciting. With that, right? You can see the whole prospect of the metaverse, the whole dynamics of it. How much is the metaverse going to grow? I would feel that the potential is unlimited. It's so huge, right? But nevertheless, right, putting our own basic emotions, sentiments aside, let us look at the market proper to see whether in this kind of economical outlook, right, when there's so many uncertainties, so the market is so volatile, is it a good time to actually invest? Or is it a good time to do hedging? Right? So let's take a look. In terms of macroeconomy, nothing much for me to share. It's actually, pretty much the same week by week. So what's ongoing is actually, the Russian-Ukraine war that is, we do not know whether it's going to turn for the better if Putin and and the Zelensky is actually going to meet in Turkey. If that's going to happen, that's awesome. If that doesn't going to happen, then I guess it adds up to more volatility in the market, right? So nevertheless, the supply chain deficit is something long-standing, regardless of whether Omicron, regardless, the Ukraine Russia war, but it's going in, but yes, worsen because of all these factors that's actually contributed to worsen further. Interest rate hike. Oh, so interest rate hike is something that's very interesting. Like I'm not sure whether for you guys who have been following me for the longest time, I've been telling you guys to look at the market, to observe the market, and only consider investing after mid March. Right? Oh, I said it there. Yeah, mid March. So why specifically mid March is because this is actually when the Fed is going to announce how much they are going to increase the interest rate. So what is so important about the interest rate? It's something that I hope that you guys understand that in the States is so different from Singapore. In the state, the inflation rate went as high as 7.9%. And how do they actually control inflation is through interest rate. Although Singapore, we have the privilege of, um, having not tailored, watered down, but nevertheless, our interest rate itself is also pretty high. And it's all tied up. I mean, it's not really tied up, but it's all related, correlated, pegged to USD. So how US is going to, respond, it will somewhat affect Singapore as well. So knowing that Fed has actually announced that they are going to increase by 25 points, and they are going to do it progressively for 6 more times this year. We know that it's somewhat, going to go in a very gradual sense. It's the interest rate hike is somewhat of the market sentiments that the investors or the institutions are comfortable with. There's no surprises. Hence, if you see the last few days after the announcement, the market went up. For the past few days, it's so exciting when we see the market went up, right? Who doesn't want to earn money? Everyone wants to earn money. I want to earn money too. And for the longest time, right, since end of last year, the market has been going downtrend. And I'm pretty sure that it gives you guys a lot of heartache, a lot of headache, worries. Is the market going to go bear? Are we going to go bust? so so thankfully in the past few days there's like a lot of more positive news that doesn't worsen the investor sentiments. Hence the market went up. Yay! We finally see greens in our portfolio slightly. I mean, day to day changes, a bit of greens here and there. It's pretty exciting. But nevertheless, how far can this green go? Don't forget that in terms of the market, nothing at all goes one straight line, right? Nothing goes one straight line. In the past 1 year, look at this S&P chart. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down. What's going down can go lower. What goes up can go higher. So one key takeaway that I want you guys to take from here is that very simple. Always ride the momentum. Okay? Always ride the momentum. You do not want to invest knowing that your portfolio will go lower and you decide to catch the dip or dollar cost average it. What we want as investor is to find the low point, ride the momentum upwards. Either you continue to ride upwards or you take profit. Either way, as investor, we are here to earn money, not to lose money. Okay. So key takeaway number 2 from this particular chart itself is very simple. I actually put in a simple moving average 50 is to 150. For now, you see that the blue line is above the purple line in the past 3 days. What does that actually mean is that very simple. Medium to long-term trend is still down. For investors out there, if you want additional confidence that the market has totally turned bullish, from this chart, not yet. Okay? You don't want to really base on the past 3 days to determine the medium to long-term trend. All right? So, if you guys are thinking of quickly, catching the opportunity because the market is going up, 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 please hold your horses. I can't emphasize this more. Hold your horses. Watch the market. All right? The key takeaway that I want you to have from this particular chart is very simple. You see the black dotted line that I actually drew here. I'm not sure whether you can see it, but yeah, I don't think you can see it. Show navigator. Oh shit, cannot. Yeah, I don't think you can see it. It's very simple. You see that there was a twin tower back in January, and after the double top, boom, crashed. Right? And then you see in March itself, there is a double bottom. Right? So is the market going to trade between the double top, double bottom for now? We do not know because there's no clear indication. But one thing we know for now is we see a very clear resistance point or line in the market right now. So it's for you to do your own analysis, okay, of how do you think we have cleared the uptrend or the downtrend. A bit of giving you guys some some putting on your thinking cap to promote some thinking that cannot be based on what we just mentioned to you. Cool. So what does Roblox do actually? Roblox is so exciting. It operates an online entertainment platform. It offers this free toolset that allows developer and creator to build, publish, and operate 3D experiences and other content. Wow. All right. Okay, cool. Roblox Client. Oh, wow. Okay, not bad. It's an application that allows users to explore 3D digital world. Wow. Okay. Roblox Education for learning experience. And there's also Roblox Cloud that provides services and infrastructures that powers the human co-experience platform. Wow. Wow. And what's the best thing? The best thing is that it doesn't only serve customers in the United States, it serves customers internationally. Look at that, man. Isn't that cool? Right? So Roblox, right? But when I think of Roblox, it actually reminds me of another company. Have any of you guys heard about Sandbox? I shall not go further. Okay. So how is it in terms of financial? Whether is this a fundamentally good company for us to invest in? We look at these three things, yeah? The income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. In terms of the income statement, is very, very good in the sense that we know that year on year, total revenue has been increasing. The net income has been pretty much profitable, increasing, but the net profit margin is at negative 25.62%. What does this mean? It actually means that this company, yes, is it profitable in the sense that it's a company receiving money from the games, from different investments and stuff, from investors? Quick answer is yes. But this company has not profit in the sense that their expenditures is more than their income. Currently their expenditures is still more than their income. Right? Hence you see why it is negative 25.62. I would very confidently say that Roblox is a growth company. It has potential to grow. Hence you see the PEG ratio is hence if you go and do the if you look through the whole analysis, right, you will know that this particular company has potential of growth. Okay, but currently it's just not making money lah. That's the only thing lah. But if you guys are so confident about the potential of metaverse, this is a company that you want to look at. Okay, in terms of balance sheet, the current ratio is more than 1, which is good. The debt to equity ratio is also more than 1, which is not very good. Just means that this company is carrying on more debt, which is very typical of a growth company anyways. And the PEG ratio is actually more than 1 at 2.13. In case you guys do not know what the PEG ratio is, a price to earning to growth ratio. It just means that this particular company valuation is slightly more expensive, right? In terms of the PEG ratio. In terms of cash flow statement, what does it say? They're spending a lot of money for operation, which is good. They're doing a lot of investment, which is good. Their financials are good. Their free cash flow is very, very, very healthy. But I guess to they're currently holding a bit too much free cash flow that they probably might want to actually look at how they can actually make money work for them. right? But nevertheless, if you look at the whole financial, right, it's actually pretty good in terms of a growth perspective. But if you are a valued investor, you want to actually invest in companies that are already making money, and you are you want it to be so confident that this particular company has growth potential. If you want it to be a plus chop, then I guess this company is not for you. Okay. In terms of valuation, how is it? Right. So if you do a discount cash flow for this particular company, you would know that the intrinsic value is about $94, and this particular company is undervalued because it closed at 40 ish on Friday. Is it a good time to enter? We look at this thing called technical analysis. Very simple. So we look at the microeconomy first. Then after that, we look at the indicators of the economy. Then we look at the fundamentals, and now we look at the technical. Okay. And I guess a lot of people just wants to jump into the technical to just enter the particular stocks. But I want you guys to actually do it step by step so that you invest confidently and with conviction. These two elements is something that is very, very important that I really want you guys to actually be able to grasp the concept of it. Right. Okay, so in terms of this particular company, how is it doing? In whether it's a good time for us to enter, we look at the 1 year chart very simply. The same thing. I actually drew the blue line, simple moving average, 50, 150. We know that short term downtrend, medium term downtrend, long term still downtrend. So if you guys are looking at investing in this particular company right now, hold your horses, okay? And secondly, right, although you see the past 2 days have been going uptrend, it's somewhat reaching the black line lah. So what does it actually mean that is actually is slowly moving towards the resistance? Are we likely to see it coming back down? I do not know. But based on the chart, you see how I draw the triangle? It is slowly converging, okay, to a point. So there might be further room for it to go lower, but it might go higher. It depends on how the next few days pan out for this particular company, right? So hold your horses, look at the chart to know when is your best time of entry if you are ever thinking of investing in this particular stock or blocks. Right? So you guys actually find my sharing to be very, very insightful, or you guys like my sharing, please do not forget to like, comment, and share this particular video so that more people will be able to benefit from our sharing. In terms of investing, in terms of trading, I guess we all want this one common point, which is to profit from the market. So yeah, let us share the love. Let more people know about our weekly sharing, and please do comment below if you guys wants to know how a particular stock of your own liking is going to move in the future. So well, comment below, let us know so that we can actually serve you to your needs next week. And for all you guys who actually want to learn more, you can actually also comment below, say me, like me, right? And I will personally DM you to share you guys my newest newsletter on investing, my own strategy that helps me to actually build a 3-digit portfolio all the way to a 5-digit portfolio. So yeah, just comment below and I will get back to you. Right? So very excitingly, that's the end of my sharing here. Do we have any
All right.
questions?
Yeah. Thanks, FINANCIALMissy. Yes, yes. So if anyone have any questions, please do leave it in the comments, and let us know, right? And we'll, give you a reply as soon as we can. But as of the moment, I don't think we have any comments, right? Yeah, but nevertheless, right? Yeah, if you watch the replay, right, or you have some questions thereafter, right, do leave it in the comments, and one of us, either FINANCIALMissy or me, will respond to you, once we see your question, right? Yeah, and right, as as just a reminder again, right? The time now is pretty volatile, right? So do either trade or invest with caution, right? Do your own due diligence, and please do your own homework before you actually enter, right? Yep, and with that, yeah, and also do leave a comment, right, on what you want us to share next week, right, next Sunday, right? And we will feature that in our session, right? If we see what stock you have for us, right? Yep. And Financial Missy, do you have anything else to add before we end our session for today?
Uh, well, guys, I think next week will be very exciting week for most of us who are actively investing in the market. So keep a lookout, and most importantly, find your own strategy. Invest with due diligence. That's all.
Yep. Wise words indeed. All right. Yeah, I think that concludes our session for today. Right. So, as always, right, we'll see you again next week, next Sunday at 4 p.m. For our next US stock pick. Right. So, see you guys at that time next week. Bye, guys.